lacking for 100+ years in American history is for our states to stand up upon the Constitution and upon those principles enshrined in the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, and to let Washington know that we will not tolerate our liberties being infringed upon now any more than we were willing to tolerate it in 1776 with King George III a million miles away on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. It's time that tyrants be brought to an end now, just like they were in 1776, and to be brought to an end today. Yeah. You know, Georgia has a long, rich history in leading the way in America in standing up for states' rights and state sovereignty. Now, I don't know how many of you remember this from your high school history or your Georgia history. I like the sign, by the way. We the people. But about 5 years after the Constitution of these United States was ratified, there was a man from another state who tried to sue the state of Georgia in the federal courts. His name was Chisholm, and the case is Chisholm versus Georgia. You can look it up when you go home. And in the case of Chisholm versus Georgia, this fella tried to sue the state of Georgia, and the federal judge issued an order to the state of Georgia demanding that the state of Georgia come and appear before him so that he could hear the case and rule on the matter. Now, here's what Georgia's response was to an out-of-control federal judge in 1793. Georgia said, "We will not come and appear before you on this or any other matter because it was the states who created the federal government, not the other way around. Therefore, the states are the master and you are our servant." Yeah. By the way, if you like that, you're really going to like this part. The state of Georgia went on to say, in that response back to that federal judge, that not only would we not come and appear before him in his federal court, but that any federal agent caught within the boundaries of the sovereign state of Georgia trying to enforce his unconstitutional ruling would be, and I quote, "arrested and hanged by the neck until dead without the benefit of clergy." The liberals will love that one. Yeah. Now, folks, let me tell you, those people who always want to say, well, we just have to go back to the intent of the Founding Fathers. You constitutionalists have got it all wrong. Well, folks, those were the Founding Fathers in 1793. They were the men who wrote the Constitution, who sent that message back to that federal judge. And those Georgians who took a stand there knew exactly what the solution was to dealing with an out-of-control federal government. And just like our problems today are no different than they were in 1793 with an out-of-control federal government, you can mark it down that the solutions today are no different than they were in 1793, and that is for us to have a governor and men in the General Assembly of Georgia who will stand up and get a backbone and who will say to Washington, enough is enough, leave my people alone. Yeah. I don't know about you, but several years ago I heard the horror stories coming out of Hurricane Katrina, when in the aftermath of that storm, FEMA and other federal agents were literally going around trying to confiscate the weapons of law-abiding citizens in the Gulf Coast region in the aftermath of that storm. I do not mean they were going around trying to confiscate the weapons of the vandals, the thieves, the looters that were breaking into people's homes. I'm talking about federal agents going to the homes of law-abiding citizens, knocking on their doors, and demanding that they turn over their personal firearms because it was a federal disaster area. Now, folks, let me tell you what any states' rights governor should have said in any one of those states, and what Ray McBerry has already said on Fox News in Atlanta. That when I become your next governor, I will put Washington on notice that the first time I find any federal agent trying to disarm one law-abiding citizen in my state, that federal agent's going to find himself sitting in a Georgia jail waiting for someone to come bail him out. By the way, you won't hear any of my opponents in this Republican race for governor say that and make that promise to you, even though they say they're Second Amendment candidates. It's about time, folks, that we stop accepting the word of people running for office who just say they're pro-Second Amendment or pro-life and start looking for candidates who will do something that is pro-Second Amendment and pro-life. That's what it's going to take if we're going to regain our liberties that have been lost. You know, I have people many times who say, you know, Ray, that story of Chisholm versus Georgia, where Georgia stood up to the federal government, that's all well and good. That's a great story, but that's ancient American history. What about today? What's the difference that one states' rights governor really could make today in the 21st century? Is it really possible that he could do it today? Let me give you a story of something that happened just a few years ago. Some of you probably are familiar, at least to some degree, with this story. Some of you may not be. I have a good friend in Alabama named Chief Justice Roy Moore. He's actually a Republican candidate for governor of Alabama this year, next door to us. He came and spoke with me as one of the other keynote speakers at the National 10th Amendment Summit that I hosted in Atlanta just about 2 months ago. When Chief Justice Roy Moore was just a judge in Alabama, he had the audacity in his courtroom, on the wall behind where he sat, to post a plaque of the 10 Commandments in his courtroom. Well, as you might figure, the ACLU did what they always do. They filed a lawsuit. The federal courts did what they always do. They ruled in favor of the ACLU, and they told Judge Roy Moore he had to get that plaque of the 10 Commandments down off the wall out of his courtroom. Judge Roy Moore replied back, "I cannot do that. I will not do that. It's a 10th Amendment issue. It's a states' rights issue, and it's a Christian issue. I will not take it down." The federal judge sent a message back saying, "Okay, fine. We'll just send federal agents to come into your courthouse and take it down off the wall and march it out the front door." Well, you see, the federal judge wasn't counting on something at that particular time in Alabama's history. The people of Alabama had elected a man to be their governor by the name of Fob James at the time. You see, Fob James was a good Christian man. He was a constitutionalist. He was someone who believed in states' rights and state sovereignty. And Governor Fob James sent a message back to that federal judge and said, "Fine, you go ahead and send your federal agents down here if you think you must, but just know that the minute they walk in the door of Judge Moore's courthouse, they will be met by my state troopers, armed to the teeth, ready to march them right back out the front door." And do you know that plaque stayed on the wall in Judge Moore's courtroom the entire time that Fob James was governor of Alabama?
Yeah.
By the way, the story goes on. Many of you know the part after that. Judge Roy Moore was such a hero to the people of Alabama that they elected him to be Chief Justice of the Alabama Supreme Court very shortly after that. They knew they had a hero, a champion of their liberties. Well, as many of you know, Chief Justice Roy Moore had a huge granite monument of the 10 Commandments put in the rotunda of the Alabama Judicial Building. Not a penny of it was paid for with taxpayer money. It was all bought and paid for with private contributions. And that monument to the 10 Commandments sat there in the rotunda until the ACLU did what they always do. And the federal courts did what they always do. And the federal judge said, "Chief Justice Roy Moore, you better get that thing out of the Alabama Judicial Building or we're going to send federal agents to come in and roll it out the front door."